God's got to say to us this morning.
All right, yeah. And like Jeremy was saying, that Faith Street app, it's designed to hopefully streamline things for us, not make it more difficult. I am in conversation with them pretty regularly, and they are working on like an in-app notification so that when somebody submits a prayer request, you get a ding on your phone, hey, somebody asked for prayer 2 minutes ago, right? And so that's the idea of it, just trying to keep up communication. It's kind of like the old prayer tree, phone tree kind of a thing where you got to call and you call the next person. And it's just trying to keep up communication within the church. And it's really difficult right now with COVID going on. So also along COVID lines, we know Franklin County, Anderson County, pretty much 3/4 of the state is in the red zone, right? We understand that. We know that. And just to let you know, for right now, the plan for right now is to just kind of continue on our current course. And that is, we've got the chairs spaced out. We're being careful about how close we are to people, physical contact. We're wearing masks. We're asking everybody to do that. And we're just going to kind of continue on that course, being careful, being respectful. If it's not an act of rebellion, there are people out there who are like, well, I'm not going to do that because I got told what to do. Listen, I'm not there. We're not there as a church. We're just going to continue doing what we feel comfortable with and what we feel is okay. And at the point that changes, we'll reevaluate what we're doing and how we're doing it. So that's just kind of where we are right now as a church. So just wanted to update you on that. That's the last announcement. No more announcements, I promise. We are going to be starting, well, it's not even a series. We call it the Junk Drawer Messages from the Junk Drawer, and the whole idea behind the Junk Drawer is the junk drawer is a place where you throw stuff that you'll pull out later that you might need, but you don't necessarily need it right now. And so we call these messages the Junk Drawer Messages, or from the Junk Drawer, and we pull them out when we need them. Because we're not in the middle of a series. They're not connected, but we're going to be doing a couple of these up until we start our Advent or Christmas series, which really is just kind of a couple of weeks ago, or weeks away, so that's kind of fun. But this morning, we're going to go to a passage of Scripture that's really pretty familiar. It's from the book of Proverbs, and Proverbs is one of those books, for me, that is really difficult to just sit down and read. You know, there's some books of the Bible, like if you're talking about a narrative in the Old Testament or if you're talking about the life of Jesus, you can sit down, you can read because it's a story, you can follow the action, all that kind of stuff. Proverbs is like one-liners here and there, right? It's just like a one-off statement. It's really difficult for me to like read and actually gain anything from it, because if you're going to gain anything from it, you kind of got to sit down and take those 2 verses and think about them and digest them rather than just like reading a whole chapter. At least for me anyway, that's the way it works. So Proverbs this morning, we're going to go to Proverbs chapter 3, and we're going to read verses 5 and 6. 2 verses. And they're really familiar verses. So if you've been in church at all, you've probably heard them. But let's just go ahead and read it. Proverbs 3, verse 5 and 6. It says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your paths straight." That's it. It's pretty familiar, right? I mean, I think we've all kind of seen that or heard it. You probably had it on a wall decoration or a Thomas Kincaid painting back in the 90s. Or cross-stitch. Grandma had a cross-stitch with it, right? There was a pillow cross-stitch on your bed or her bed or whatever. Trust in the Lord and lean not on your own understanding. So that's where we're going to focus this morning, and I want to talk about trust. What is trust? How do we trust? Who do we trust? What does it mean to trust in God with all of our hearts? And what does it mean to acknowledge him? How does acknowledging him make our path straight? All of those things, all right? So we're really going to break this down. And I could really do a whole series, and I might still do a whole series on the idea of trust. Not now, maybe next year. But if I was doing a series, I would call it Trust Issues. We got trust issues. And that's the truth, people. We have trust issues. Everywhere we look, we have trust issues. And I think all of us, to a certain degree, have that because it's just kind of built into us because we're not sure about people and all that kind of thing. But I know some people in my life who have some serious trust issues. You ever run across people like this that have serious trust issues? People that go through life suspicious of everybody, because everybody's got a secret hidden agenda that they're trying to get across, or they're trying to accomplish, or that kind of a thing. And every time their toes get stepped on in some little minor way, it's all of a sudden, oh, they did that on purpose. Look what they're trying to do. They're trying to accomplish something, right? I've experienced those people. I've experienced those people in church. I've experienced those people as friends, and it's just not. It boils down to trust issues, right? We got trust issues. I remember one time when we were youth leaders in Asheville with that youth group, we decided, hey, let's get the kids out. Let's do some fun stuff. Let's do it, and let's serve the community. What can we do to serve the community? It's cold right now. It was like December. Said, you know what? Let's pass out some hot chocolate. Free hot chocolate. We'll make a big sign that says free hot chocolate. We'll pass it out. We'll stand at Walmart because there's a lot of people in and out of there, and we'll give them some free hot chocolate. And I'm telling you, people would not take it. Free hot chocolate on a cold day. Nope, not interested. Not interested. I don't have any money for you. I'm not giving, or I give in other places. We're not asking for donations. This is not a fundraiser. Here, have some hot chocolate. Nope, not interested. Or the general, like, if I don't look at them, if I don't make eye contact, they don't exist, right? We all do that. You say, yes, we do. We even had a manager from the store come out and ask us to leave because somebody walked in and said, there's somebody out in front of the store harassing customers and asking for donations. Apparently, teenagers with a giant sign that reads, free hot chocolate, trying to give somebody on a warm drink on a cold day is harassment. I don't know. What did I say? Cold drink on a warm day, or warm drink on a cold day? I don't remember. Anyway, you know what I'm saying, right? Apparently, that was interpreted as harassment, and it's because people have trust issues, right? I don't know who you are. You don't know me. I don't know you. I don't know what you're trying to accomplish. All my past experience tells me that you've got something else going on here. I mean, who knows? I could grab that hot chocolate, and for all I know, I'm signing up for a timeshare in Boca Raton, right? I don't know. Maybe that's what this thing is about. Trust issues. Trust issues. Because again, I don't know you. My past experience tells me that somebody's always trying to get something, pull something over on me, that there's a catch. You've got something else going on here, and it's from trust issues. And I don't like going through life like that. I just don't like going through life like that. I discovered a couple of weeks ago, it hit me, the reason I so dislike politics. I don't know if I said this from stage or not. I said it in a couple of conversations. And it's because I don't feel like I can trust anything anybody says in politics. I just don't believe it, because there's always an agenda going on. Even if the agenda is you're trying to get me to vote for you, there's an agenda, right? And I don't know if I can ever even trust the thing that you say is actually what you believe, or if you just think that's what I want to hear, and so then I'll vote for you and all that. I can't handle it, because my preference, and I generally try and go through life like this, my preference is to trust people. Like, I don't want to be suspicious. I would rather go through life starting out at a level of trust and occasionally getting burnt, because that does happen, but occasionally getting burnt, rather than to go through life being suspicious of everybody in order to avoid pain from broken trust. Because if I'm suspicious of everybody and I don't trust anybody, I don't have any real relationships. I don't have any real relationships, or very few anyway. And I think that's because trust is relational. Trust is relational. The whole idea of trust is based in relationships. Without trust, there can be no relationship, or a very, very shallow one if you don't have trust. In a relationship, we'll grow in depth. Write this down. This is important. A relationship will grow in depth according to the amount of trust that is involved. Trust is relational. Those two things cannot be separated, or it would be very difficult to separate them. The degree to which you trust an individual will dictate the depth of that relationship. So bring it back to our scripture. Proverbs 3. When Proverbs 3 says, trust in the Lord your God with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. What Solomon is writing is a statement of relationship. It's not just a wise saying. It's not just something that you should take to heart and think about for a little bit. It's a statement of relationship. He says, enter into relationship with God. Enter into relationship with God. If there's going to be a relationship, you must trust him at least a little bit. There's got to be at least a little something there, right? If you're going to enter into a relationship with God. At the very least, we know that to be in a relationship with God, you have to trust him to the level to say what Jesus did on the cross and in the resurrection was enough for my salvation, right? You have to trust that. Otherwise, there's not a relationship with God. You don't have a relationship with God. That is the path for relationship with him. Otherwise, if you're not trusting Jesus as enough, then you turn to something else. You turn to Buddhism. You turn to enlightenment or meditation. You turn to any kind of other religion, whether it's Christian religion or Hinduism or Buddhism or Islam, whatever. It's absent of trusting God, or it's absent of trusting that Jesus was enough. So you're not trusting that Jesus was enough in those things. So if you're going to be in relationship with God, it's got to start there, right? It's got to start there. So Proverbs 3 says, trust in the Lord and don't lean on your own understanding. Trust in the Lord and don't lean on your understanding. At the very least, that starts with trusting Jesus. In fact, that's how some people would describe their salvation experience. They would say, that's the day that I trusted Jesus. Or, would you come up here? Is there anybody who would like to trust Jesus for their salvation, right? That's a term, and that's the basic. It requires trust. Relationship with God requires trust. Now, take that statement as a command. Proverbs 5. Take it as a command if you want to. It says, you must trust God. He demands it, all right? Let's go with that for a little bit. He demands your trust. God demands your trust. When was the last time that anybody in your life demanded your trust and they got it? Leadership. If a leader stands up in front of a crowd, if the President of the United States stands up on a podium at a press conference and says, listen, people of the United States, you must trust me. I demand your trust. Do we then go, oh, you're right, I trust you? No, that's not how it works. That's not how it works. Because trust is relational. Trust is relational. And trust is relational, not transactional. Making a demand is asking for a simple transaction, isn't it? If you make a demand, I say this, you do this. That's a transaction. There's no relationship required for that. There's no relationship required for a transaction. If you go to the store, you pick up a gallon of milk, they say that gallon of milk is $3. You say, I'll pay you $3, you get to take home the milk. That's a transaction. You don't even have to have a relationship with a cashier for that. You can just go straight to the self-checkout, and if you say it's $3 and I pay you $3, I get the milk, right? That's a transaction. That's not a relationship. There's no relationship required for that transaction. There is no trust required for that transaction. I'm giving you money. You say this, I do this, we're all happy, okay? It's a transaction. Trust doesn't work that way, though. Trust does not work that way. It's not a transaction. Relationship with God is not a transaction because it requires trust. If somebody in leadership, if the President of the United States demanded our trust, we would say, you know what? Let's enter into an agreement, into a relationship, that not on an individual level, right? But let's enter into some kind of a relationship where I can see that you are trustworthy. That you are worthy of my trust. That if I trust you, if I trust what you say, then what you'll do is actually what you say. Because then I have a little bit of experience and I can see that I can trust you. So God is not making a demand for trust. God is asking for a relationship, and he's saying, see that I am trustworthy. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Don't lean on your understanding. Enter into a relationship with me and see that I am trustworthy. But some people don't want that. Some people look for a transaction with God rather than a relationship with God. I say the magic words. I do the right things. I'm generally a good person. Boom, I've punched my ticket. Let's go. Right? We're looking for a transaction. People look for transactions. They don't look for a relationship with God necessarily. But God's not a cashier. God's not interested in transactions. From the very beginning, he has been interested in relationship. From the very beginning. Not transactions, not divine transactions. He's been interested in relationship. Right? Youth. We got a few youth here. Wednesday nights, what are we talking about? What we talked about on Wednesday, we said, who is God? God is creator. Why did God create? God created for relationship with us. That's the purpose, right? So God, from the very beginning, is interested not in divine transactions, not in granting eternity, but in relationship. That's what he's interested in. And relationship requires trust. Have you gotten that point yet? Relationship requires trust. So trust in the Lord and lean not on your own understanding. So how do we get to that point then? How do we get to the point of a relationship with God where we can trust him enough to not lean on our own understanding, but trust in him instead? How do you get to the point where you can trust God rather than depending on your own knowledge, rather than depending on your own senses, what I see, what I hear, what I feel, what I touch, what I know? How do I get to that point in a relationship with God? How do you get there? Trust is based on the character of the one trusted. Okay? Trust is based on the character of the one trusted. So if you and I are going to get to the point of trusting God in a relationship where we can depend on him and we can depend on what he says rather than depending on our own knowledge, rather depending on our own senses, then we have to get to the point where we have to decide, is God trustworthy? It's based on his character. Is he trustworthy? Is he worthy of my trust? And we ask that question. Is he worthy of me depending on him for all things? Whatever it is, salvation. Is he worthy of me trusting him for salvation? Can I depend on him for that, or do I have to do something myself? Is he worthy of that trust? Is he worthy of the trust for my life in provision, in finances, in the career? Can I trust God to provide for me if I give freely to others when I see that there's a need? Can I trust him in that? Is he worthy of that trust? In relationships to other people, can I trust God to have my back, to comfort me, to defend me when I've put myself out there and things get rough in a relationship with other people? When I feel attacked, when I feel let down, when I feel like that trust was broken, can I trust God enough to be all that I need in that? Is he worthy of that level of trust? So we ask that question. We ask the question, is he worthy of trust? We have to. If we're going to get to the point where we have a relationship with God, we have to ask, is he worthy of that trust? And the church answer is yes, right? Yes, of course he is. He's God, right? We know that up here. We know that answer. Yes. But what about here in our heart? What about here where it says, Proverbs 3 says, trust in the Lord with all your heart, not with all your head, not with all you know. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. How do we decide that? How do we find out if he's trustworthy? Asking that question, how do we find out the answer? Experience. Experience. You find out with experience in a relationship if somebody is trustworthy. That tells you whether a person or God is trustworthy. At Bethel Camp, when we were assistant directors there, we would divide the team or the whole camp up into teams, right? So there'd be like, I don't know, if there's 100 kids, we'd have 10 teams. And you would have 10 people on each team. And we would divide them up, and it was different. It was separate from their cabin groups. And the whole point was, you know what, let's mix the camp up. Let's get people to have some friendships that they didn't come here with, and let's get them experiencing other people, all that kind of stuff. And you'd go throughout the week of camp with that team, and you would do your games, your team games, and there would be a total of points at the end and all that kind of stuff, right? So good, fun camp stuff. But the whole point of it was to mix it up. But these kids were coming into people, into relationship, into contact with people that they had never met before in their lives, right? So somebody's from Ohio, another person's from Georgia, another person's from North Carolina, another person's from Eastern Kentucky, right? So all these people are coming together. I don't know you. I can't trust you. So in order to try and build that trust in those relationships, because trust is relational, right? In order to build that, you got to do stuff to try and, like, activities to try to build that cohesiveness as a group and those trust relationships as a group. And so, of course, one of the first things that we would do if you're trying to build trust in a group is a trust fall, right? You do a trust fall. So you do these activities, but trust fall was always one of them. And with a trust fall, there's a certain level, there's a platform, right? And one of the team members stands up on that platform. Everybody else kind of lines up, alternating. I'm facing this way, the next person faces this way. We kind of interlace hands, and that person falls, and we catch them, right? Everybody catches that person. It's a trust fall. You got to trust your team to catch you. And without fail, generally 8 to 10 people can catch one person pretty easily, right? With everybody paying attention, I've never seen anybody fall. With everybody paying attention, I've never seen anybody fall, okay? But you got to trust your team to catch you. And without fail, there was always 1 or 2 or 3 people on that team who would look at everybody else and go, nope, not going to do it. Can't trust you because I don't know you. And it didn't matter. They could be the last person on the team. 9 people could have gone before them. They could have seen 9 people fall and get caught without any trouble, and they get up there and it's like, yeah, but I might be the one you drop. Why? Experience, right? Experience. So what we would do is we would take those individuals and say, okay, so listen, I get that you're scared from falling up here. Then we catch you. Well, what if we put you on a chair right here? Would you do that? We'll catch you. Yeah, okay, I'll do that. Boom. Okay, how about up here? We'll catch you. Boom. How about up here? Boom, I'll catch you. What's the difference in going from here to here to here to here? What's the difference in seeing other people get caught and still not trusting? It's experience. Experience with the team saying, I know I trusted you for that. You know what? I can probably trust you for a little bit higher. I can probably trust you for a little bit higher. And that relationship, it grows. That's the way it works with God. How do you know you can trust him? Because he trusted him before. Even if it was a little bit, even if it was that initial trust for relationship with God, experience with God in relationship with him is the evidence that you can trust him again. And that cycle just keeps going. Because if you can trust him, then in trusting him, you get to know a little bit about him a little bit more, and then you get to trust him a little bit more because you know him a little bit more, and then you know him a little bit more so you can trust him a little bit more, and it grows and it's cycle. That's what I mean when I said earlier, the depth of your relationships will grow depending on the level of trust that you have with that individual, and that's the way it works with God. The depth of your relationship with God is dependent upon the amount of trust that you have in that relationship, the amount of trust that you have in him. It's not about how much you've done for him or how much you can do for him. It's not about how many times you said the magic words that determines the depth of your relationship with God. It's how much you're willing to trust him. It's not even about how much you know about him or how much you know the Bible or if you can quote the Bible front to back. You can tell me a scripture from every single book of the Bible. You would know what Habakkuk 2:1 says. You would know, right? It doesn't matter. That doesn't tell me anything about the level, the depth of your relationship with God. That tells me how much you know. That doesn't tell me how much you trust him. You can know all about him. You can believe all that he has done. You can believe that he is God. You can believe he's capable of all things. You can have seen him do other things in other people's life when they trusted him. But that doesn't tell me anything about your relationship and the depth of your relationship with God. Because it always comes back to how much you trust him. If you go to the book of John, in chapter 2, Jesus has... This is just after he's performed the miracle at the wedding where he turned water into wine. He goes from there. He spends some time in the temple. He flips some tables over. He cleans house. He does some teaching. In John he only talks about 7 miracles. We know Jesus did more miracles than that, so I'm guessing there's more miracles. So people, as we read this, people have seen Jesus do miracles. They've heard his teaching, be incredible teaching that they've never heard before. He taught like he had authority and all of those things, right? So then we go to John chapter 2, and let's read from John chapter 2, starting in verse 23. It says, "Now when he was in Jerusalem at the Passover during the feast, many believed in his name as they observed his signs which he was doing. But Jesus on his part was not entrusting himself to them because he knew all people, and because he did not need anyone to testify about mankind, for he himself knew what was in mankind." Now, it seems like a weird scripture to read right now, right? Because what does that have to do with what we're talking about with trust? We do see the word entrusting in there, and we'll get there. But there's something that I want you to see in verse 23 right there. It says that many believed in his name because they observed the things that he had done. They observed his many signs, okay? So they saw the miracles that he was doing, and it says many believed in his name. But Jesus, it says in verse 24, Jesus did not entrust himself to them because he knew them. That's kind of weird, right? Why not? Why wouldn't Jesus entrust himself? Well, first of all, what does entrust mean? To entrust yourself to somebody. Well, if you look at the Greek words that are used in this passage in verse 23 and 24, the Greek word that is translated, Jesus did not entrust himself to someone, is the Greek word pisteuo. Right? Pisteuo. Pisteuo. That's our transliteration, right? Pisteuo. So, what's interesting about that is that the exact same word that in verse 23 is translated believe. They believed him, or they believed in his name. Okay? So, you could read it like, so many pisteuoed him, if we're going to do this, many pisteuoed him, but he did not pisteuo himself to them. It's interesting, isn't it? They believed in Jesus, but he didn't believe them. They believed in Jesus' name, but he did not believe them. He did not trust them because he knew what was in men's heart, right? That's what the scripture says. Believing in God is not the same as believing him. Believing in Jesus is not the same as trusting him. Believing that he existed, that he created, that he did all these things, seeing the miracles, I believe he does that, that's great. He does all those miracles, and I believe in his name. That's different than believing him. It's different than trusting him. Because believing him and trusting him is about you and a personal relationship with him. It's personal to you. Those people believed in his name. Jesus, the name Jesus, right? In Hebrew, it's Yeshua. Yeshua. It means the Lord saves. So they believed in his name. They believed, and I don't know if this is what it means or not, but it makes sense to me. They believed that his name said the Lord saves. They believed that the Lord saves. They did not believe, they did not trust him that he was the one to do the saving. They believed in his name. Yeah, God saves. Yeah, God saves. But they didn't believe him when he said, I am the source of that salvation. I am God. I am the Messiah. He's a prophet. He does great things, but they didn't trust him to do their saving, to do the saving for them. Believing God yourself is trusting him with your own life, with your own self. Trusting God for your life is not the same as knowing about him. It's not the same as knowing the Bible. Trusting him more leads to knowing him more because it's a relationship. You can't separate out those things. You cannot separate them out. Take it back to Proverbs 3 again. There's a little more that I want you to see, and we'll kind of jump to verse 6. Verse 5 says, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not lean on your own understanding. Verse 6, in all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your paths straight. I want you to see in verse 6, it says, in all your ways acknowledge him. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he'll make your path straight. Now, when I read that word acknowledge, it's kind of a pedestrian word, right? Like if I acknowledge something, I'm just recognizing that it's there. There it is, right? It's a cowboy walking into a saloon, woman standing at the bar, and he says, howdy, ma'am, right? He's tipping the cap. Just acknowledge, there she is, right? He doesn't know or interact with that woman. He just, hey, you're there, right? I'm recognizing it's there, I'm acknowledging it. So verse 6, when it says, in all your ways, acknowledge him, is it saying in all your ways, just be aware of God? Acknowledge him, thanks God, right? Or is that what this scripture is saying? I don't know. I felt like when I read that, okay, there's got to be more to that, and there is more to that. When you look at that word, the Hebrew word in Proverbs that is translated acknowledge, it's the Hebrew word yada, right? We're familiar with that. Yada, 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 right? Blah, blah, blah. Yada, yada, yada. Things happen. Yada, yada, yada. But that word yada is translated 7 times in Scripture. It's translated acknowledge, right? I recognize it. I acknowledge it. 645 times in Scripture, it is translated to know rather than acknowledge. That's totally different for me. That's totally different. To read that verse and say, in all your ways know him, that's totally different than just to acknowledge him. That's not a tip of the cap. That's in all your ways, I've got a relationship with him because I know him. And it fits, all of a sudden, it fits with trust, right? Trust in the Lord in all your ways. Lean not on your own understanding. In all of your ways, know him. It clears things up. And then the phrase, in all your ways, could probably be just as well understood along the way, or as you're going on your way, or on your way, or along the way, or as you are going. So speaking figuratively, on the course of your life, that's what it's saying. So in the course of your life, as you are going, know him. That's what that says. And he'll make your path straight. Trust him. Because the more you trust him, the more you know him. The more you know him, the more you trust him. In all of your ways, in the course of your life, know him. And he will make your path straight. So in everything you're experiencing, in everything you're doing, know him. Don't just acknowledge him. Yeah, you're there, God. Great. No, know him. Experience him in that relationship. Jesus, going back to John 2, Jesus didn't entrust himself to those people or make himself available to those people because they believed in him, not they believed him. And I don't think that's Jesus or God withholding himself from people. He's not like, because they didn't do the right thing, right? He's not withholding himself that way. That's a fact of relationship. You don't trust me, we're not going to have relationship. I don't trust you. I'm going to be real careful with what I tell you. I'm going to be real careful how much of myself that I reveal to you or I allow you to in on. We're not going to have a relationship, right? And so when Jesus says, when it says that they believed in his name, rather than believing him, it's a fact. Jesus can't entrust himself. He can't enter into that relationship because they're not interested in trusting him. So tackling the last part of verse 6, you can't get to know the fullness of God if you don't trust him. You can't get to know the fullness of God if you don't trust him. Tackling the last part of verse 6, in all of your ways know him, and he will make your paths straight. How does knowing God make our paths straight? How does knowing God make our paths straight? We read a verse like Romans 8:28, and it says, and we know that God causes all things to work together for good to those who love God, to those who are called according to his purpose. Now, I can know that verse up here in my head, but if I don't trust God, if I don't know God in that relationship, if I don't trust him in my heart, if I don't believe him when God says, I cause all things to work together for your good, it's not going to mean anything for my life if I don't trust it when he says it. But if I trust God, and if I actually believe him when he says that he causes all things to work together for my good, not he's causing all things, but he's causing all things to work together for my good, if I have enough experience with him, in relationship with him, to actually trust him when he says that, then I can actually believe that regardless of my experience right now, I can trust him that all things work together for my good. He's making all things, regardless of my experience right now, I can trust that he's making that happen. I don't have to lean on my own understanding, because of my experience and my relationship with him leads me to that point. And if I can trust God, then I can actually live my life knowing that he's causing all things to work together for my good. Again, that's why Proverbs says, don't lean on your own understanding. Don't depend on your own understanding. It's not saying leave your brain out and check your brain out and come in here with God. It's saying don't depend on that for your experience in this relationship. Don't depend on your own understanding. Trust him in this relationship. And when you trust him, when you see an immovable mountain in your life, in your path, that's okay. Because I can trust that he's going to make this situation work out for my good. He's either going to take me through the middle of that mountain in a tunnel, he's going to take me up over the mountain, he's going to take me around the mountain, or he's going to push it to the side. And I can trust that that's going to be the case in every situation in my life, because I know in my past experience that he's been trustworthy when I've trusted him before. And that is actually my experience, because he said he would use all things for my good, and my relationship with him, where I've trusted him, is one that I can continue to trust him more. So what ways might God be asking you to trust him today? Why don't the worship team come on back up? What ways might God be asking you to trust him as they come up here? What are you experiencing right now that you're looking around you and your understanding, your experience, your knowledge up here says, this isn't going to end good. There's no hope here. And God is asking you to trust him when he says he can cause all things to work together for your good. This can't be for my good, and God says, trust me. I cause all things to work together for you, for your good, for those who love me. What's God saying? Trust me a little more in this. Maybe you're not experiencing that kind of a moment in your life. Maybe it's not that time in your life right now where God is asking you to trust him through a difficult time, but maybe God is asking you to trust him in different ways. Or maybe you're just at a point in your life where you feel stuck in your relationship with God. It's dry. I'm not moving. God, I know you're there. I know we got this relationship thing, and that's great, but I just feel stuck. This feels stuck in my relationship with God. You might be learning all kinds of great stuff. You might know all kinds of things. But what you're after is you're not after knowing more about God. You're after knowing God. You want to know him more. Your relationship with him feels shallow maybe. And you want to get deep. Maybe it's time to trust him in a new way. And that's probably pretty scary. And that's probably why you're still standing there in that position. That's probably why you feel stuck, because it's scary, right? It's a scary position to be in, to trust God, to lean not on your understanding, but to lean on his knowledge of all of history, right? That's a scary place to be, because it involves risk. Trust involves risk. It's called a trust fall because I got to trust you or I'm going to fall, right? I got to trust you to not let me fall. I want to let you in on a little secret in recreation, okay, in the recreation world. Got a master's degree in recreation. Now I'm preaching. But I got a master's degree in recreation. Here's the thing, okay? A trust fall, there's a thing in challenge courses and in trust fall activities and all those. It's called perceived risk. Perceived risk. Because it's about that feeling of this feels risky. Zip lines are a perceived risk because they're actually really safe if the companies followed all the protocols, right? A trust fall is actually really safe, but it feels risky, doesn't it? Roller coasters are a perceived risk. Not too many people fly off of those things. You know what I'm saying? It's perceived. It feels risky. If this action feels like I might not make it through, even though you're almost 99.999%, the chance is that you're going to make it through. It's a perceived risk. When you believe God, when you trust God, that's a perceived risk. That's a perceived risk. When you trust God at His word, He's not going to let you fall. You know that? He's not going to let you fall. And what happens is every time you trust, you can take that fall from a little bit higher. And every time you trust again, you get to know Him a little bit more. You get to understand that He is actually trustworthy of my entire life, everything in my entire life. You get to know Him, you get to know His character, that the impossible is actually possible because of who He is, and you can trust Him regardless of what you're going through. Your relationship with God will deepen and expand the more you trust Him with more of your life. The more you let Him in, the more you trust Him, the more you know Him, the more you let Him in, and the more you trust Him, and the more you know Him. It's a cycle over and over and over. So can you trust Him when He says, I've made you new? Can you trust Him that you're a new creation right now? You're not the old dirty sinner anymore if you've been born again. If you've given Him your life, if you said, Jesus, forgive me for my sins, I can't do this on my own, I need you. Can you trust Him that you're actually made new? Can you trust Him when He says that? I'm telling you, that's where I started to believe God in a different way 1.5 years ago. And my walk with Jesus is deeper. My closeness with God is bounds more than it's ever been. And I've been a Christian since I was 17 years old. And in 1.5 years, when I trusted to say, yes, I actually believe you that I'm made new, regardless of my understanding, regardless of the circumstances I'm finding myself in right now, I'm trusting you, Jesus, that I've been made new. My walk's gotten closer. It's gotten deeper. So can you trust Him when He says that? Can you trust Him when with your finances? Can you trust Him with your finances? Can you trust Him that giving to the church won't break you? Can you trust Him in that? That contributing to a ministry, this ministry is worth the risk? And then He'll always meet you there. Start it a little bit and watch it grow. Watch your trust in Him grow. And when a need arises and you want to meet it, watch Him meet you. Not because you're filling some kind of a religious obligation, not because you're meeting the tithe or whatever, but because you're trusting Him, right? Because you're trusting Him with all of your life. And you're finding out what kind of a God He really is. Can you trust Him with your family and with your personal relationships? Can you let Him into those relationships that are difficult and have been difficult for a very long time? Can you trust Him to let Him have the grudges that you've been holding on to for years? Can you trust Him with that? Can you let Him have that pain? Can you trust Him with your career, with your future, with your retirement, with your hopes and your dreams? Can you trust Him with those? He will make your path straight. It might be bumpy at some points, but he'll make your path straight. He can make all things work together for the good of those who love him. Why don't you stand up to your feet? I don't know if there's something that you want to pray about today. If there's a specific need that you have, if it's an area of trust, if it's any of those things that I talked about, if it's none of those things that I talked about, but it's an area where you want to step deeper into trust, but you're not sure. It feels a little bit risky. I'm not sure that I can do that, God. I'm not sure. Can I trust you in that? Trust me. Trust me. You can trust him, right? And I know there's no replacement for personal experience. Whatever your experience might be with God, step it up a little bit and he'll meet you there. He will, because you can trust him, because he is trustworthy and he proves it every single time. It feels like a risk, but it's not. It's a perceived risk. It feels like a risk, but it's not. Trust him. Trust him. It's not a demand, it's an invitation to relationship. If you trust me more, you'll know me more. It's not an earning of that relationship. It's just a fact of how relationships work. Right? So Andrea's back at the back if you want to pray. I'll be up here if you want to pray. But you're free to move. Let's worship a little bit more. And let's as you sing these songs, think about what you're singing, because they tie incredibly into what we're talking about this morning, about trusting God, about stepping out into a new direction. It's a perceived risk. It's not a risk. God will meet you there every single time.